Mzansi, you are listening to Farmers Inside Track, proudly brought to you by Food from Mzansi. Officially, this is the world's best podcast for 2024, as awarded by One IFRA, the global organization for the world's press. Of course, I'm your host, Duncan Masiwa, and welcome to episode 445. Now, in this episode, we delve into the value of drip irrigation for small-scale farmers, exploring how this innovative solution can transform their farming practices. Martin Bahnemann, Netafim's business developer for small-scale farming in South Africa and the SADC region, guides us through the benefits of drip irrigation. He also shares essential agronomic and maintenance principles and discusses how farmers can achieve optimal results in their fields. Martin, welcome to Farmers Inside Track.
Thanks, Duncan. It's a real privilege to be here and to be chatting to you.
I'm quite interested and excited about this specific conversation because we're talking about drip irrigation. Off air, you mentioned that a lot of small-scale farmers are starting to adopt this irrigation method. I'd like to hear more about why you think that is, but we'll get into that a bit later. Maybe to kick off this conversation, is drip irrigation a viable solution for seasonal vegetable production?
Duncan, I'd actually like to take it a bit further and say that I think that drip irrigation is the most viable production mechanism for vegetables. It makes a huge difference. It decreases labor. Literally, you can irrigate a hectare, 2 hectares, 3 hectares with the turn of one tap. And with the turn of the tap, if you've put the technology in place to apply fertilizer, fertilizing those 3 hectares as well. And if you compare that with the old-fashioned way of doing it, which would be things like overhead sprinklers, impact sprinklers, those things that go... Those sprinklers require continual moving. They require careful placing. The hose pipe that they drag behind damages crop quite significantly, and they require somebody to be there twice a day, every day, just to keep moving those sprinklers around. So with drip irrigation, you don't need that. With drip irrigation, we are putting the right amount of water right at the plant roots, and we are controlling it. So for every 1 liter of water that you put down with one of those impact sprinklers, you're probably putting down half a liter of water with drip irrigation. It is the way to go. I am absolutely convinced of it. So where's he up in the far north of Zambia, right the way to the southern reaches of Africa? It is the system for small growers.
The system for small growers. Someone might be listening to this conversation right now, Martin, and they might not be yet convinced. Why should farmers choose drip irrigation for vegetable production, and what are the benefits? You've sort of started highlighting some of those benefits in terms of water saving, but what are some of the other benefits that we can look forward to?
I want to hijack this opportunity a little bit that you've given me here, and that is, yes, there's a perception out there by certain groups of farmers that drip irrigation is difficult, but every single time, and I say this without exception, the problem always goes back to the filtration of the water that the farmer is putting into his drip system. And if farmers don't filter the water properly, the drip irrigation system will give them problems. But if they do put the proper filtering, the drip irrigation system can run for many years. And I'm talking about decades. Recognizing that drip irrigation, if one were to equate it to a motor car, the whole drip irrigation system is the motor car. The tapes that put down the water are like the tires of the car. And the tires of the car wear out after 70,000 kilometers, if you're lucky. Our dripper lines will also, over time, wear out, and you need to replace them. But the filtration and those main pipes, we never need to replace those if they are properly maintained and managed. So back to filters. The secret is filters. Find yourself the right filter. So in the Netafim context, the right filter, they're really the best filter to start using if you're a small farmer is one of our screen guard mini filters. We've got a very nice one, a 2-inch screen guard mini filter. But most farmers don't realize that the screen that is inside is color-coded. So there are yellow ones and red ones and black ones. Yellow ones take out very coarse material. Black ones take out very fine material. For our type of drip system for small farmers growing vegetables, use a red screen insert. And if that insert is blocking too quickly, if the screen is blocking, simple, just put another filter into the system. But that filter is the absolute part of your irrigation system. I've been to Madagascar and I go to farmers and I say, guys, show me your system. Why is it not working? And I'll then turn around and say, well, let's go and have a look at your filter. And yes, there's a filter board, but somebody's taken out the filter screen, the insert, because it's blocking. Well, it's there to block. And if it's blocking too much, then you've got a filter that is too small. I talk about that Madagascar example, but I've had exactly the same up in northern Zambia, or if we go to Botswana, or we go to Mozambique, or just here in good old South Africa. If you've got the right filter, your drip irrigation system will work. Keep the water clean. And if you can do that, you really are not going to look back. Drip irrigation is the way to grow veggies.
It's clear that it's important that farmers actually filter their water. Another thing that often plays a role is, I suppose, management styles or management practices and maintenance thereof. You mentioned, drip irrigation promising a lot, but sometimes these promises are not always realized in the field, Martin. What are some of the reasons for this, and how can optimal results actually be ensured?
The managing of drip irrigation is different. So typically the drip irrigation will leave a wet spot, perhaps the size of a small book on the surface. But the secret is underground, what happens under that wet spot. And water doesn't just move up and down, but it moves sideways as well. We call it lateral percolation. In a clay-type soil, that water will very, very easily move horizontally, and it will move less quickly in the vertical position. Sandy soils will be the opposite. So how do you know what's happening to that water? The secret, and anybody who's attended one of my training sessions will know I'm passionate about this. I've always got one in my vehicle. The secret is a good pair of boots and a spade. As a farmer, get out into your field and just open up a very small, no wider than the spade. It can even be narrower, an opening where the plant roots are. And if you see that there's not enough water down to about 30 centimeters, you're not applying enough water. You need to increase the length of time that you apply water. But on the other side, if you see that it's wet all the way down to the bottom, past 40 centimeters, you're applying too much water. We very often don't recognize as farmers is that it is as easy to drown a plant as it is to let a plant die because it is not getting enough water. So that management, it sounds a bit difficult. It's not. It is really simple. You only have to go and open that trench once or twice, and you'll very quickly start to see how the water is reacting to your soil. And then the simplest way to manage it is just in terms of the length of time that you allow those drippers to run. So if you are not having success farming your veggies with drippers, you are either putting down too much water or you're not putting down enough water. Use the spade, best technology around to do that type of thing, and there are many other highly sophisticated technologies that the big boys are using. But for the small guy, a good pair of boots and a spade, get in there and go and have a look at what's happening in your soil.
Absolutely love it. I definitely enjoy learning all the basics. And these are some of the basics that we often forget as growers along the way. Let's talk about irrigation products. Which irrigation products or solutions are available to farmers who plant seasonal crops?
We at Netafim have a really, really nice spin or pipeline called Streamline X. Now, Streamline X will give a farmer, if they look after it and they're not overly rough with it, will give a farmer 3 harvests. In other words, you'll be able to lay the pipe out, grow the plant, harvest. You'll be able to do that for 3 times. And this is a product that costs less than R1.50. So 50 cents to grow 12 cabbages. it really is value for money. It's easy to use. Aligned with the Streamline X, use at absolute minimum. And this is a really nice, robust filter, but it's a manual filter, so you will have to clean it yourself. Use a Screen Guard mini filter with a red insert. Now, there are 4 different sizes of Screen Guard minis, but Netafim is passionate about supporting small farmers. So our pricing on the Screen Guard mini is right as low as it can go, and they are not unaffordable. So if you need to, use one Screen Guard mini, but you can use 2 Screen Guard minis. And then, Duncan, one of my personal favorites is what we call fast connectors. So these are the connectors that can connect, for example, the Streamline X pipe to the header line. You punch a hole, you insert this connector. You don't need any tools to make any other connections. Once the hole is punched, it's got a little screw-on clamping device that is so easy to use. In the same breath, we need to flush our filter pipes, our filters. We need to flush our drip lines. And my recommendation to guys just starting out is flush your drip lines every single week till you start to get a feel for how clean your water is. If your water is very dirty and the flush that comes out is always brown, you need to flush more often. But if the flush that comes out is more and more clean, then you could perhaps, instead of doing it once a week, you can do it every second. There are some guys who only need to do it once a month. But to do that flushing, we've got a fast connector called a line end. It works on the same type of clamping technology. It's a little ring that slides over a taper. Now, all you do is, it takes literally 3 seconds to take that line end out, allow the pipe to flush, and to then another 3 seconds to reinsert that line end. Then I always say to the guys, keep a connector, which is a device exactly the same, a fast connector, that can join 2 pieces of pipe together, 2 Streamline X. The one thing I'll guarantee is that somebody will punch a hole in the Streamline X when they are weeding or doing some type of maintenance. It's going to happen. You can guarantee that. Now, if you've got one of these connectors in your pocket, it takes 5 seconds and you can fix that pipe. So keep 1 or 2 of those connectors in your pocket. Then, Duncan, if I talk about these connectors, farming is about making money. And one of the things that really concerns me, especially when I go into the smaller farms, is that very often I'll find these connectors and they'll be lying around, they'll be on the ground, they'll be trodden on, etc. That connector could probably last 10 years, probably more. So by throwing it away, you're actually taking your profit and making sure that this is not as much as it can be. So if I quickly sum up, for me, a starter system, put a Screen Guard mini filter in with a red element, use Streamline X. The Streamline X I would use is a 300 millimeter dripper spacing that delivers 1.6 liters per hour at a 10 meter head. That Streamline X will work right the way down to 2 meters. So you don't have to worry too much about the pressure. 2 meters is a little bit taller than a tall man. So these systems will work on very, very low pressures. It literally, Gogo, who is feeding the family, she can get advantage from these systems. Or the guy that's producing 5 hectares of tomatoes for the fresh tomato market, he can get absolute benefit out of these systems. The fast connectors, fantastic. They just make farming easy. Then for small farmers, the connector that we use to connect into the pipeline has got a little valve on it. So that little valve can be opened and closed individually. So you can literally, as a small farmer, if you need to harvest 1 line of cabbages today, you just switch that valve off. You can harvest the line of cabbages while you are still irrigating the rest of your vegetable farm. It's all about making farming easy and profitable.
Most definitely. There's a lot of buzzwords are seeing in the agricultural space, such as, precision agriculture, increased efficiency. Let's talk about that for a minute. Why should vegetable farmers strive for increased efficiency in the use of water and other resources, and why do they need precision?
It looks like you know exactly what I'm passionate about. The precision side of it, let's deal with that quickly, comes down to that with drip irrigation, you put every drop of water right at the root of the plant that you are growing. So if you compare that with other sprinkler systems, if you would go back again to those impact sprinklers, you go back to those sprinklers, once you've irrigated with those sprinklers, everything is soaking wet. There's water running down, the plant leaves are wet, everything is wet. And we are probably only going to use, I don't know, and one can go back to the textbooks, but probably only going to use about 50% of that water to actually growing our plant. So the other 50% of the water, or 30% of the water, whatever it might be, we have thrown away. We've pumped that water into our field, and then we have allowed it to dissipate and disappear without doing anything to the crop we are growing. But what we have done is we've created an environment that is fantastic for weeds and all the other things that we don't want. We've made it difficult to get in and out of our land. You've now got a soggy morass, so you can only get in and out wearing a pair of gumboots or when it's dried out slightly. And then you've also created complications for yourself because many plants, tomatoes, great example, many plants become more susceptible to diseases when their leaves are wet. So by putting the water to just where the roots are, we create an environment that benefits the plants while it disadvantages all the other things that are trying to eat into our profit. And then water, as I said just now, that we are wasting, let's be conservative, we're wasting 30% of that water. Every drop of that water that we are wasting had to be carefully placed, be pumped on the farm. So the farmer has had to pay for either diesel or electricity, or he's had to put in a larger pumping system with solar than he would need to do with drip irrigation. Drip irrigation, small pumps, low pressures, which means that pipelines got a smaller specification, they're not as expensive. It just wins on every single basis. I want to point to a case study. I was very involved with a group of farmers, and they were growing on communal farms. Each farmer had their own plot, average plot size, about between 7 and 10 hectares. One of those farmers moved from the old impact sprinkler system, and he installed drip irrigation. He also went the next step and he put in a small automatic filter, self-flushing filter. So he didn't have to keep going and cleaning the filter. It just did it by itself. That particular farmer started producing almost double what his neighbors were producing. The neighbors were producing, and I'm being careful, I'm not giving you the actual crop, but I can take people and show them. This is real life. We haven't imagined this. His neighbors were getting 89 tons of crop per hectare. This guy's pulling off 149 tons. And the difference is drip irrigation. But now if you take it one step further and you look at that 149 tons, he did it with probably a third less water. So not only is he producing a lot more crop, he's also taken the input costs and reduced them as far as possible. You can't create a more winning scenario than that. And then in the same farming area, it had a catastrophic drought. The only farmers who did not lose out on income and did not have to destroy crop because it was unsaleable due to the impact of the drought were the farmers with drip irrigation. So in terms of climate smart, you cannot get better than drip irrigation. In terms of running a profitable vegetable farm, you cannot get better than drip irrigation.
Thanks, Martin Bahnemann, Netafim's business developer for small-scale farming in South Africa and the SADC region. You can, of course, read more on this topic by visiting www.foodformzansi.co.za. And that's a wrap. And remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss any of our episodes. For me, Duncan Masiwa, our technical producer, Megan van der Vent, and the rest of #Team Food from Zanzi, thanks for listening.
Life in South Africa can be a lot. I mean, scroll through Twitter for a minute and tell me I'm wrong. Thank God for South Africans though, right? We're inspiring, and even on the bad days, we fight back with a smile. That's why I love Food for Mzansi so much. They're not ashamed to celebrate the ordinary unsung heroes who work every day to put food on our nation's tables. Go to foodformzansi.co.za and never miss an inspiring story.